Welcome back to Views with Hughes, Agenda Free News. This is Jerome Hughes. We're going to go ahead and get right into it. But first, I want to go ahead and give a special shout out to all the families out there who've lost loved ones on this day back on 9/11/2001. And as I've said before, today is also my birthday, but I will be celebrating it this weekend. So be sure to expect some videos that I have planned for this weekend. So like I said, let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, the media's relentless assault on Star Wars fans who had actually criticized the recent Disney Star Wars show, The Acolyte from Kathleen Kennedy, is once again at the forefront. You see, people are talking about how Kathleen Kennedy and her refusal to address the fans' warnings led to the show's failure. And the media's portrayal of those fans as racist and sexist trolls is not only misleading, but also profoundly unjust. You see, the Kathleen Kennedy shills were at it again, and when Disney announced The Acolyte under Kathleen Kennedy, there was a palpable buzz of excitement among some, Disney Star Wars enthusiasts, where fans were hopeful that this show would explore the fresh aspects of the Star Wars universe while honoring the franchise's storied legacy. The problem is, everyone knew that this took place in the High Republic, and Kathleen Kennedy and her involvement with the show, which Kathleen Kennedy approved, brought it with a mix of anticipation and at the same time anger. Now, while some were optimistic about Kathleen Kennedy, that Kathleen Kennedy would manage to deliver a fresh take that respected the Star Wars legacy, others were actually wary given the Kathleen Kennedy and her track record with previous Star Wars projects under Disney. Now, let's be honest here. Initially, this excitement seemed well placed, and Kathleen Kennedy and her tenure at Lucasfilm had seen the release of various Star Wars content, and fans were eager to see how the Acolyte from Kathleen Kennedy would fit into this evolving narrative. However, as the show premiered, and the show's premiere approached, early feedback from fans began to surface. And these early reviews highlighted the serious concerns about, the show's direction, particularly regarding its, adherence to the established Star Wars lore and its focus on political themes. And fans who had long supported Star Wars were concerned that Kathleen Kennedy and her influence was starting to steer the show away from the core elements that they cherished, basically stealing away from what George Lucas created. But, despite these early warnings from dedicated fans, Kathleen Kennedy and Disney chose to proceed without actually adequately addressing the feedback. You see, refusal to listen to these concerns led to a product that struggled to connect with its audience. And The Acolyte from Kathleen Kennedy faced poor reception and disappointing viewership numbers, as you all know, which also reflected the growing disenchantment among the fan base. And this situation is symptomatic of a broader issue with Kathleen Kennedy, as well as her, handling of the Star Wars universe under Disney Star Wars, where fan feedback has been repeatedly overlooked or dismissed. All right. And for a lot of us, that's nothing new or surprising at all. And you see, Kathleen Kennedy and her approach to pressing forward despite valid fan concerns is a key factor in the show's failure. Now, when a dedicated fan base expresses concerns to the likes of Kathleen Kennedy, especially about a fan base as beloved as Star Wars, ignoring the feedback of the fans can have serious repercussions. You see, Kathleen Kennedy's decision to go ahead and disregard this input and push ahead with the show as planned reveals a troubling disconnect from the very audience that has long supported the franchise itself. Now, this oversight by Kathleen Kennedy led to a show that failed to resonate with its intended audience, those who are normies or those who are the woke crowd or the alphabet community. And instead of addressing the actual issues with the Acolyte under Kathleen Kennedy, media outlets like Rolling Stone and Forbes have actually shifted away from their focus to attacking the fans who voiced their criticisms. Now, Rolling Stone, for instance, has framed criticism of the show as a part of a broader, unjustified backlash against diversity and inclusivity. Of course, they're shilling at this point. But according to Rolling Stone, fans who were disappointed with the Acolyte, thanks to Kathleen Kennedy, are simply, as they will call it, reacting negatively to the show's diversity and perceived woke political agenda rather than engaging with content on its own merits. Now, this particular narrative is not only misleading and harmful, but by framing criticism as hate, Rolling Stone and other media outlets collectively, shut down a legitimate discussion about the show. And fans who raised concerns about this, yes, the OG Star Wars fans, when they raised concerns about the show from Kathleen Kennedy, are being unfairly labeled as bigots rather than having their valid grievances addressed. And this approach serves to protect Kathleen Kennedy and her underlings from the scrutiny and deflects attention away from the real issues with the show. Now, it's a classic case of media bias where focus is shifted from the quality of the content to the motivations of those who criticize Kathleen Kennedy and her work, or the lack thereof. But Forbes has also adapted a similar stance. You see, downplaying the legitimate critiques of the show under Kathleen Kennedy, as well as labeling dissenting opinions or OG Star Wars fans as mere hate speech. And this tactic not only misrepresents the nature of criticism, but also avoids addressing Kathleen Kennedy and her role in the show's failure. Now, by framing criticism as hate, Forbes and other outlets sidestep the substantial issues raised by fans to protect Kathleen Kennedy from necessary accountability. Now, this approach reflects a broader trend in the media coverage where genuine concerns are dismissed to maintain a specific narrative, one that shields Kathleen Kennedy and her other projects from scrutiny. Now, as you all know, and this is no surprise, social media has also played a significant role in this controversy. You see, the woke left has been actively targeting YouTubers as well as content creators who have voiced their honest opinions about the Acolyte under Kathleen Kennedy, the likes of Neurotic, RK Outpost, and others. These YouTubers, many of whom have been longtime supporters of Star Wars, have found themselves under attack simply for basically just sharing their views on Kathleen Kennedy and her handling of the show. You see, these efforts to deplatform these critics are also part of a broader trend suppressing dissenting voices to maintain a controlled narrative. And that right there should be no surprise to any of us, because this attempt to silence critics is not just about controlling the conversation, but it's also about, stifling meaningful discourse by targeting YouTubers and content creators who challenge Kathleen Kennedy and her work. And the woke left aims to create an environment where only approved opinions that are similar to theirs are allowed. You see, this particular suppression of diverse viewpoints is a dangerous precedent that undermines the principles of free speech and open dialogue. And you see, these attacks on YouTubers are a clear attempt to, intimidate and silence those who dare to critique Kathleen Kennedy and her handling of the Disney Star Wars franchise. Now, there's something else that we also have to remember, where it's crucial to understand that many of these different critics of the Acolyte under Kathleen Kennedy are lifelong Star Wars fans. You see, these fans were excited when Disney acquired the franchise, hoping that it would lead to a revitalization of the beloved saga. However, Kathleen Kennedy and her focus on pushing a political agenda rather than delivering quality content has led to widespread disappointment, and then became vitriol and anger. Now, this isn't about one show. It's about a broader trend that has affected the franchise as a whole. And for us, we don't want anything political in the Star Wars universe. We never did. You see, Kathleen Kennedy's tenure has seen a shift away from the core elements that made Star Wars special. And this shift has led to frustration among the longtime supporters who feel that the franchise's legacy is actually being undermined. And for all of us, this is no surprise, because the disappointment with this show under Kathleen Kennedy is just, a part of a larger pattern of dissatisfaction with Disney's handling of the Star Wars brand. And fans' concerns are not just, about individual shows or movies. They actually reflect the deeper discontent with the direction that Kathleen Kennedy has taken the franchise. Now, let's think about it like this. One of the most troubling aspects of, the woke media's narrative is that they claim that Star Wars fan grievances are nothing more than just expressions of hate. And this particular oversimplified view dismisses the nuanced critiques offered by fans who deeply invested in the franchise, and the idea that criticism is equivalent to hate is not only inaccurate but also dangerous, and it seeks to shut down meaningful discourse about Kathleen Kennedy and her role in the show's failure, and to protect her from the necessary scrutiny. Now, this particular criticism under the Kathleen Kennedy of the Acolyte under Kathleen Kennedy should be viewed as a reflection of fans' desire for the franchise to go ahead and return to its roots, not wanting to see a beloved saga treated with the respect that it deserves, rather than being overshadowed by political agendas at its core. And this situation is about more than just the fate of one television show. It's about the principles of the free speech and the right to express dissenting opinions. Now, fans have a right to go ahead and voice their disappointment as well as push for improvements, and this should be recognized rather than dismissed as hate. Okay. Now, we must also be aware of the broader trends in social media and that seek, to suppress the dissenting voice and the efforts to discredit the critics that are part of a larger pattern of attempting to control the narrative. And it's crucial to also recognize these tactics and continue advocating for the open and honest discussion about Kathleen Kennedy and her work. Now, we shall also continue to engage with the content that we love in a thoughtful and constructive manner. You see, criticism should be aimed at improving the franchise and making sure that it remains true to its roots. But by doing this, we help to actually make sure that the future projects are successful, even though Kathleen Kennedy doesn't want that, and make sure that the legacy of Star Wars is preserved for generations to come. Now, the woke media's the ongoing attack on Star Wars fans who criticized the Acolyte under Kathleen Kennedy, is a clear example of how criticism can be distorted as well as dismissed in favor of maintaining a particular woke narrative. Now, as we all know, Kathleen Kennedy and her handling of the show and the broader issues within Disney's management of Star Wars actually deserve thoughtful and honest critique, even if they don't like it. Now, fans have a right to express their opinions and push for improvements, and it's important to stand up for these particular principles, okay? So, let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Also, be sure to include any additional thoughts you might have this particular topic. If you enjoy what I shared in this video, go ahead, smash the like button, share far wide across social media. And if you haven't done so already, and you enjoyed all the content that I put out there, go ahead, subscribe to the channel, click the notification so that way you're notified of future uploads and updates. Till then, peace.